don't have to look far to see it. Heartache is everywhere. In your workplace, in your community, and with the people you love. There's a quiet but steady weight of trauma, grief, and untold stories. And if you're someone others turn to, someone who listens, holds space, and shows up, then you've probably felt the limits of what you can carry on your own. That's where narrative-focused trauma care comes in. This training from the Allender Center is designed to equip you to engage the effects of trauma with wisdom and compassion. Starting with narrative-focused trauma care level 1, you'll receive rich teaching that explores trauma, identity, shame, attachment, and family of origin, integrating psychological insight with a theological understanding of God's redeeming work in our lives. But what makes this training truly transformative is your small, facilitator-led story group. These groups are where concepts become personal. It's where you begin to see how your own story connects to the kind of healing and care you want to offer others. Because at the Allender Center, we believe you can't guide others where you haven't gone yourself. Narrative-focused trauma care level 1 training is for anyone ready to grow in clarity, capacity, and care, for your own story and for the stories entrusted to you. Applications for our next training cohort are now open. To find out more about narrative-focused trauma care training with the Allender Center, visit theallendercenter.org/trainings.
Thank you for listening to the Allender Center podcast. I'm Dr. Dan Allender.
And I'm Rachael Chen. We're fiercely committed to providing hope and healing to a fragmented world.
And restoration for the heart.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started.
Sabbath requires engaging what we talked about before, dreaming, anticipating. But then once you have planned, once you have created a structure by which you enter into a summer activity, then you got to live. You got to live. And I want to begin with a phrase that seems to come from our military. I think if I've heard it as a kind of statement from the Marines. Embrace the suck. Heard that before?
No.
Well, what does the phrase mean to you as we step into the category of participation in the play of reality?
It kind of feels similar to like radical acceptance. So.
I think it's probably a more biblical sounding. Embrace the suck does not sound highly biblical, but very effective as a language tool to engage. Nothing works out as you planned, as you prayed, as you, in one sense, dreamt.
That's right.
And that isn't totally true. I mean, I've had some things that I've dreamt that have turned out even more sweet than I could have created. So, but I think it does require an engagement with summer plans, Sabbath orientation, that things often bear this intersection between desire and disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, that's like, it's the inevitability of being human in a world that can be incredibly beautiful and incredibly broken, and being people that are incredibly beautiful and incredibly broken. And the thing about Sabbath is that it's not something we do in isolation or solitude. So it always involves relationship and invitation to play in relationship. And it's hard enough to like step ourselves into play, let alone try to do that with other people. And, I was thinking about this conversation, even, because there's a part of me that's like, well, it's also hard to do it when it feels like everything around you is burning down. Like maybe you need to stay hypervigilant. Maybe you need to stay Like, how could you possibly step into play and delight and all these things when there's so much crisis and so much urgency, maybe even within your own body or your own relationships? And I was thinking about our work on the Sabbath book and thinking about Sabbath as a commandment and actually being the fourth commandment that kind of transitions between the love of God and the love of neighbor, and thinking about the people of Israel following this commandment even in the wilderness, or like, just that sense of there's something we're being invited to about leaning into the play of God that feels so counterintuitive, paradoxical, and even counterproductive, right? At times, like, what is this possibly accomplishing toward our mission, toward justice, toward restoration of all things? And I think in some ways that's part of why we have to step into this reality of play, because in some ways, if we don't remember what it is we're met for, what we're fighting for, what we're moving to restore, we don't give our bodies a taste of that. If we can't push against disappointment, or, like, I guess, as you're saying, embrace it as a part of the process, as a part of play, we don't actually get to see what can be co-created in the midst of it. And not just with others, not just with ourselves, but with God.
Well, it's prompting a memory. I'll check with you to see if you share it. I had this sweet privilege of writing the book on Sabbath, working with you and Philip Nellis.
That's right.
And the two of you were sitting on a couch in my office. And I think it was you, but again, that's why I'm checking. At some point, you got animated, as you sometimes do.
Shocking. Shocker.
And I remember you just sort of leaned forward, and papers were kind of, you remember you used to bring like trillion
I had like 7
articles, papers. Always had that sense of like, oh my gosh, pure, unadulterated, but beautiful chaos is coming into my office. Not that it was pristine by any means, but nonetheless. And you at one point leaned forward and said, is about radical defiance.
I do not remember that, but I'm not surprised.
And I remember thinking, this actually changes so much of the nature of my understanding of Sabbath. And the embracing the suck, owning the radical surrender, all that's true, but it doesn't quite get to the notion of that defiance of, we know nothing will likely work out if you have dreamt well about what you anticipate with regard to this taste of delight and honor and awe and worship in the context of whatever you do in that summer moment, probably won't work out. Do we then give up hope? Lessen hope? Does disappointment become what obscures the nature of our desire? And I think that notion of what we come to in Sabbath is in and of itself a radical defiance of, quote unquote, what seems to be reality, by bringing into play a sense that there's another reality, always intersecting, always in some sense bumping into the mirror material world as we see it, but it is the work of the unseen world at play. And do we have a sense of that? It will not erase the frustration of missing the literal boat because your flights were delayed. Your heart's going to be broken if that's been your dream of a cruise and you didn't make it. But how will you in that, again, embrace the suck, yeah, but far more have radical defiance that somehow, even within disappointment, there's an opportunity for, I think the word I want to use is reconstruction. You get to reconstruct a dream within a dream. And of course, I can't help but say from The Princess Bride, Mawich, a dream within a dream.
We just watched that with our kids. They were like, "What is this?"
You need a certain sophistication to be able, which again, your teenagers may have or may eventually have, but as a classic film that does describe, you need to have a dream within a dream. And that dream reconstruction has to have a defiance in order to escape disappointment leading to resentment versus, okay, things are not working. How can we engage? Not just make it a little bit better, but find in this something that bears a radical reconstruction of a new dream.
Hmm. Man, I wish part of me wants to be like, yes, and here's all my examples of what that has looked like. And I'm struggling to like remember details, but I am remembering the feeling of like letting the disappointment be present when a dream of a different kind of play is being disrupted, being dismantled. As some might say, being deconstructed in real time because of circumstances, or maybe because you have to pivot to join someone in their suffering. Or, the most simple examples that come to mind is in the midst of COVID, we were trying to plan outings with our kids that disrupted the monotony and the terror and kind of the anxiety. And most of the time, they were like preteens, and we were pulling them away from screens and getting out the house, and in some ways not anticipating this anxiety they would feel entering out into the world, that it felt more vulnerable in their little bodies, and they would have the most biggest resistance. And I remember those being really pivotal times for me because I didn't quite have the capacity. I was needing a different kind of rhythm, a different kind of freedom, a different kind of play, and I didn't have a capacity in those moments to escape resentment, as you say. Like, I just went right into, why are you so like self-centered and not wanting to embrace this beautiful opportunity for us to do something different? We just want to go home. And like, I was not able in some ways, because I think part of the reconstruction is actually having the capacity to see what's going on underneath the
Yes.
surface, right? Whether it's, okay, so like, how do we renegotiate our dream here? How do we, with a disrupted plan, how do we even allow grief to move us into new imagination, right? Because for so many of us, disappointment isn't storied, it's embodied. And for many of us, it might be what we anticipate more than goodness,
Yes. Oh, I
right?
think that's, let's say it again. I think we often, as you said in the last program, we in one sense work from the worst case scenario. And then if things are a little bit better than that, it's like, great, that's great. We're asking for a counterintuitive move, and that is dream. Like last summer, we had great plans that got disrupted because Becky's best friend was dying. And we knew that we had to cancel plans that we had been dreaming and anticipating, and then make a trip back to Columbus, Ohio, where we're both from, to be with her friend Julie. In the context of that, we are doing something that is right. It is, inconceivable not to be there. But how do you, when you've lost certain dreams and then you go into a heartbreaking, where you go, how do you anticipate the time with Julie? That's beyond my pay grade imagination. It was right to do, but it was a war, watching a dear friend die. But as we began to do that work of reconstruction, it's like, what are we going to do in the time we're there? Because you can't be in this room 24 hours a day.
Right.
There have to be, got to give her a break. got to give Becky a break, etc. And Becky went, you know, I want to walk around Jenny's ice cream. Have you ever had Jenny's ice cream?
Ooh.
Oh my gosh, there is joy ahead for you. But I don't know if it's in Philly, but it actually began, Jenny's Ice Cream, in Columbus, Ohio, actually a place called Grandview, Ohio. And it's where I was born with my biological father and my mom. We lived in Grandview for a short period. It's also where Jenny's Ice Cream. And I'll just say, there's a lot of good ice creams. This is in the top 5 in the universe. It's good, very good, but it holds more memory because it was one of the few places that Becky and I could take my mother, particularly when she was suffering the beginnings of her dementia, that she could have joy. And so it was good ice cream, but also a memory that held goodness. And she was like, I need to walk around because her father had lived in Grandview. So she's like, I want to walk by your house. I want to walk by my dad's house. And both were within a mile and a half of Jenny's original. Like the first Jenny's ice cream came in that place. And I'm like, yeah, we can do this. We've created already a plan that this would never have been on our agenda. And to say a stroll and ice cream became better than the plans that we had? No. But it became something where there was something holy, defiant, but also really, and again, a little bit of a pun to say, it was really sweet to have added calories, but also memory being forged into that interplay of creating goodness.
Wow. And I think that that's a kind of play that we don't often imagine when we think about what play means. I think so often our sense of play involves more like escapism or, like what does it mean to imagine play that persists in the midst of suffering or play that gets co-created in the midst of, dreams deferred, right? And for me, I can just say that is still a place of growth because there's such well-worn neural pathways that have helped me mitigate disappointment, right? Okay, let me just turn to dissociation or okay, we can't do that. So you know what? That's fine. Let's just all pick something that is kind of more self-soothing oriented and actually doesn't allow us to be present with each other in the way we were hoping for. Or let me just give in to the rage and then we can just sabotage this whole thing where we don't even want to be around each other and therefore we feel better about not being with each other. And so there's something really beautiful about your and Becky's capacity in this moment to choose something that is far from escape of grief. It's a return to memory that has a lot of honor, but also the playfulness of Jenny's ice cream in the midst of it. And I'm sure stories of just how you found each other, being so close and yet so far away for such a season and finding each other. And so I think that's a really poignant memory to bring.
And it in part was, shall we say, sponsored. Like, I'm not sponsoring Jenny's. I would love, if the owner of Jenny, heard the podcast and said, I think I'll send him a free pint. But so there's no sponsorship here. But the sponsorship came in large measure because we were reflecting on our dear friend Stacey Eldridge's book, Defiant Joy. It's like, oh, here's that word again, defiant joy. Like, I I'm not going to deny I am experiencing loss and heartache. And every hour we spent in that hotel room, hospital room, it was just, again, just even thinking about it, I can feel that just desire to put my head on the table and weep.
Uh-huh.
And it's not yet. And there was something as we departed, because where this hospital was in the area at Ohio State University wasn't a far drive for us to get to that spot. And it felt defiant. Like we are going to live in a way in which, even though death is present, and in this case, I'm not using metaphor,
That's right.
the disappointment of not having rivers open so that my grandchildren can fish the rivers we had planned to fish. Yeah, it is a kind of death, but we're talking about a death. And then to be able to say, what in the name of God is Paul talking about in 1 Corinthians 15 when he says, oh, death, where's your sting? Where's your victory, death? Because when you're looking at the particularity of the surface of reality as we live, it sucks. And to have that defiance coming along Pascal and going, I'm going to make a big gamble. And here's the gamble. The resurrection is true.
Yes.
And death, you son of a bitch, you don't get the final word. You narcissist, you consuming, predatory, malignant narcissist, you don't get the final word. You don't get it in politics. You don't get it in familial interactions. You don't get it with the loss of dreams, even if it's a very small dream, like the Phillies might win. And to hold that in that sense of, no, you can't pretend everything's well. But my guess is, in most occasions, there is something comparable to memory being lived out with the anticipation of joy in the moment. And whether that's Jenny's ice cream for you, or I can't remember now, the donut place you stop on the way to the Phillies game.
Federal Donuts.
It doesn't have to be calories, sugar, or starch, but it does have to have a taste of goodness. And that's what true play, I think, holds. We get to play in the realm that death doesn't win.
Right.
And so how do we say now in the reconstruction, we will find something where we can laugh, or at least say, and we've had stories, again, I will not take you into the particulars, but disasters. And at one point, I remember, Becky, that this was in Germany with regard to just horrible events happening, where she just said, well, I don't see any good, but this will be a good story one day. And you kind of go, well, that's a long way off, but indeed, defiant joy is how we're meant to play. There's a third thing that we want to put words to, and that is, if you begin to dream, anticipate, you begin to play and participate, there has to be, in Sabbath, a time in which you reflect, ponder, and in one sense, make use of what has occurred for what will one day occur. And we'll jump into that next time.
Sounds good. Thank you again for joining us. We hope that the conversations we share with you here on the Allender Center podcast have touched your heart and sparked a sense of hope within you. Our work at the Allender Center is fueled by the support of people like you. As a nonprofit organization housed within the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology, Our mission is to boldly engage the impact of trauma and abuse on the human heart and to provide hope and healing to individuals, families, and communities. Your contributions directly contribute to making this vision a reality. If you feel moved to join us in this work, we invite you to consider making a one-time or monthly gift. Your donation, no matter the size, plays a significant role in bringing the hope of redemption and healing to so many. To give, simply visit theallendercenter.org/give. Once again, we extend our heartfelt gratitude for your support. Together, we can continue to bring hope and healing to those who need it. Thank you.
The Allender Center podcast is produced by the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology.
If you'd like more information about the Allender Center, you can look at theallendercenter.org.